Hey everyone, tonight we're going somewhere colder than any place we've been before. A place where the snow is as vast as the sea and the silence is broken only by the wind, the bark of a dog, and the distant rhythmic clang of a pickaxe on frozen earth. We're traveling to the 20th century, to a vast, invisible empire of barbed wire and brutal labor that stretched across the Soviet Union. We're going to the Gulag, and we're going there in the dead of winter, where the temperature itself is a weapon, and survival is not measured in years, but in hours, in calories, and in the sheer animal refusal to lie down and die. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Now dim the lights, let your mind wander, and allow the gentle rhythm of my voice to lull you towards sleep. Maybe settle in, pull your blanket a little closer, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You are not a hardened criminal. You are an ordinary person, an engineer from Moscow, a farmer from Ukraine, a poet from Leningrad, a history professor from Kiev. Your crime was an offhand joke about Stalin told to a friend who turned out to be an informant. Or perhaps you were a former soldier who had been a prisoner of war in Germany and were therefore automatically considered a traitor for having been exposed to the West. Or maybe you committed no crime at all. Maybe your name was simply on a list, a neighbor coveted your apartment, or you were arrested to fulfill a regional quota for enemies of the people. One night, there is a knock on your apartment door. It is the NKVD, the secret police, their faces impassive, their long leather coats smelling of cold and tobacco. They give you 10 minutes to pack, and then you are taken away into the darkness. After a sham trial where your confession, a document detailing fantastical plots of espionage and sabotage, has already been written and signed for you after days of interrogation and torture, you are sentenced under Article 58 of the Soviet Criminal Code to 10 years of corrective labor. And so begins your journey into the vast network of forced labor camps known as the Gulag Archipelago. The journey itself is a form of torture, a calculated process of dehumanization. You are packed into a cattle car with 100 other men, a sweltering, suffocating box in the summer, a frozen steel tomb in the winter. The journey east, across the Urals and into the vastness of Siberia, can take weeks, even months. There is little food, less water, and no sanitation beyond a sloshing hole in the floor. The weak die along the way, their bodies simply pushed out of the train at the next desolate stop. When you finally arrive at your destination, a remote camp in the Kolyma region, a place known among prisoners as the Cursed Island, you are a gaunt, hollow-eyed shadow of your former self, stripped of your name and now known only by a number. But your ordeal, you come to realize with a sickening dread, has just begun. The first and most powerful enemy you face is the cold. This is not the familiar, bracing cold of a European winter. This is a Siberian winter, a force of nature so extreme it feels like a malevolent, living entity. The temperature can drop to 40, 50, even 60 degrees below 0 Celsius. At these temperatures, exposed skin freezes in minutes. A deep breath feels like inhaling shattered glass, searing your lungs with an unbearable pain. Metal sticks to bare skin instantly. Spitting is an act of folly, as the saliva freezes into a solid pellet before it even hits the ground. Your survival depends entirely on your clothing, and your clothing is a pathetic joke against such an elemental foe. You are issued a thin, padded cotton jacket, a telegrika, trousers of the same flimsy material, a shapeless fur hat with ear flaps, the ashanka, and crude boots, the valenki, made of pressed felt. This is your only shield against a cold that can kill a man in a matter of hours. The boots are your most precious possession. If they get wet, and they always do, your feet will freeze, leading to frostbite, then gangrene, and then a slow, agonizing death in the infirmary, if you are lucky enough to make it there. You learn to wrap your feet in rags, portianki, a desperate, extra layer of insulation. Your home is a long, rough-hewn wooden barack. A barack. There is no insulation. The wind slices through the countless cracks in the walls like a razor. You sleep on a hard wooden bunk, a nary, often sharing it with another man for warmth, a desperate, non-negotiable intimacy with a stranger. There is no privacy, no personal space. You are crammed in with 100 other souls. The air thick with the smell of unwashed bodies, cheap tobacco, makorka, damp clothing, and collective despair. The only source of heat is a single, small iron stove in the center of the room, which is often barely functional and for which fuel is a precious, stolen commodity. The men huddle around it, a desperate, silent congregation seeking a fleeting moment of warmth that never seems to penetrate their bones. At night, you sleep in all your clothes, your coat pulled up over your head, your own breath freezing into a fine layer of frost on your blanket. Sleep is not a rest. It is a temporary surrender to a cold that seems to seep into your very soul. Your second great enemy is hunger. It is a constant, gnawing presence that eclipses all other thoughts. The camp runs on a brutal, simple principle known as the cauldron scale, the idea that the food you receive is directly and mathematically tied to the work you perform. Your daily ration is bread, a wet, heavy, black substance made mostly of rye husks and whatever other filler could be found. A worker who meets 100% of his daily work quota, an almost superhuman feat, receives a ration of about 700 grams. A worker who fails to meet his quota, a weakling or a dokodiaga, one who is reaching the end, receives a much smaller penalty ration, perhaps only 300 grams. This creates a vicious, inescapable cycle of death. The less you work, the less you eat. The less you eat, the weaker you become. The weaker you become, the less you can work. You see men around you, once strong and healthy professors and engineers, slowly descend into this spiral, their bodies wasting away, their eyes becoming hollow, their minds consumed by a single all-powerful thought: bread. A single crumb dropped on the dirty floor is a treasure to be snatched up and devoured. In addition to the bread, you receive a thin, watery soup, a balanda, twice a day. It is usually made from rotten cabbage, potato peelings, fish heads, or whatever meager scraps are available. It is little more than hot, foul-tasting water, but it is warm, and for that moment of warmth in your belly, you are grateful. You guard your ration with your life. To have your bread stolen is a death sentence. You learn to eat it immediately, or to hide it deep within your clothing, to sleep with it clutched in your hand. This constant, grinding hunger erases your past and your future. There is only the present, and the agonizing wait for the next meager portion of bread. Your work is the third enemy, a force designed to grind you down, to extract every last calorie of energy from your body before you die. You are assigned to a work brigade and marched out of the camp gates before dawn, often in near total darkness. The guards, with their bayonet rifles and vicious dogs, flank your column. You might be a logger, felling massive Siberian larch trees in the deep snow. You use a simple two-man saw, your hands, protected only by thin mittens, quickly becoming numb with a deep, aching cold. The work is brutally hard, and accidents are common. A falling tree, a slipped axe, a snapped cable, all can mean instant death or a crippling injury that will lead to a slow one back in the barracks. Or you might be sent to the mines, gold, coal, or uranium, working deep underground in dark, unsafe tunnels, breathing in toxic dust that will slowly destroy your lungs. The work quota, the norma, is set at a level that is almost impossible for a healthy, well-fed man to achieve, let alone a starving one. The guards and the brigade leader, often a hardened criminal known as a blatnoy, will beat you for slowing down. You learn to conserve every ounce of energy, to move with a slow, deliberate rhythm, to find the least strenuous way to perform your task. But there is no escaping the exhaustion. At the end of a 12-hour workday, you are marched back to the camp, your body a symphony of pain, every muscle screaming in protest. You are a human machine being run until it breaks. Beyond the cold, the hunger, and the labor, there is the fourth enemy: other men. The camp is a brutal social ecosystem. The guards are one thing with their casual cruelty and absolute power. But within the prisoner population, there is a rigid and violent hierarchy. At the top are the blatny, the professional criminals. They do not work. They run the camp's black market, they control the distribution of food and clothing through violence and intimidation, and they prey on the politicals, the Article 58 prisoners like you. They will steal your bread, your boots, your last worldly possessions. To resist them is to invite a savage beating or a knife in the ribs in the dark of the barracks. You learn to make yourself invisible, to never make eye contact, to give up what little you have without a fight. Survival means learning to navigate this treacherous social world, to find a small group of trusted comrades to watch your back, to understand the unwritten rules of the zona, the camp zone. And so, your life becomes a series of small, desperate strategies for survival. You learn to value a single needle and thread more than gold, as it allows you to constantly patch your threadbare clothing. You learn to carve a spoon from a piece of wood. You learn how to conceal a small piece of bread. You learn which guards are merely indifferent and which are sadistically cruel. You learn to listen for the signs of scurvy, for the loosening of your teeth. Your mind, which once wrestled with poetry or engineering problems, is now entirely consumed by these small, animalistic calculations. It is a process of profound and brutal simplification. You are stripped of your past, your profession, your family, your very name. You become a creature whose only purpose is to survive until the next bowl of soup, the next ration of bread, the next sunrise. And as you lie on your hard bunk in the freezing dark, listening to the wind howl outside the barack, you do not dream of freedom. To dream is a luxury you can no longer afford. You dream of bread, and you pray that you have the strength to wake up in the morning. The air in the Cathedral of Notre Dame is heavy and cold, a damp, ancient chill that even the presence of thousands of bodies cannot entirely dispel. It smells of melting beeswax, of damp stone, and of the nervous, perfumed sweat of the most powerful people in Europe. You stand in the specially constructed musicians' gallery, a small figure lost in the vastness of the cathedral, your violin tucked under your chin. You are a professional musician in Paris in the year 1804. You have played in smoky taverns, in the glittering salons of the newly rich, and in the orchestras of the grand opera houses. But you have never played a concert like this. Below you, the entire political and military might of France is assembled. A vibrant sea of plumed hats, velvet robes, and uniforms heavy with gold braid. And on a raised platform before the high altar sits the man for whom this entire, monumental spectacle has been arranged: Napoleon Bonaparte. Today, he will cease to be first consul of the Republic. Today, he will crown himself emperor, and your job is to provide the soundtrack for the birth of an empire. The pressure you feel is immense, a weight heavier than the cathedral's great stone roof. This is not just a performance. It is a meticulously choreographed act of political theater, and you are a small but essential part of the machinery. For weeks, you have been engaged in relentless rehearsals under the demanding, tyrannical gaze of the official court composers, men like Giovanni Paisiello and Jean-François Lesueur. They are not easy masters. A single misplaced note, a slightly off-key harmony, and you are subjected to a torrent of furious, whispered abuse. The music for this ceremony has been composed specifically for the occasion, a grand, triumphal score designed to overwhelm the senses and legitimize the new regime. It is a fusion of sacred hymns and bombastic military marches, a sound that is both a prayer and a threat. You know your part by heart, every note, every rest, every subtle shift in dynamics. You have played it so many times that your fingers move on the strings of their own accord, a muscle memory forged by fear and endless repetition. Your position in the gallery gives you a unique, bird's-eye view of the unfolding drama. You watch as the great procession enters the cathedral. The highest officials of the state, the marshals of the empire, the foreign dignitaries, all move to their designated places with a solemn, practiced slowness. Then comes the imperial party. Napoleon himself is dressed in magnificent velvet robes embroidered with golden bees, his expression a mask of cold, unreadable authority. Beside him is Josephine, his wife, her gown a cascade of silk and diamonds. Following them are the members of the Bonaparte clan, their faces a mixture of pride and undisguised ambition. They look less like a family and more like a newly minted dynasty, acutely aware that the eyes of the world are upon them. The final and most reluctant participant in this drama is Pope Pius VII. He has been persuaded to travel all the way from Rome to sanctify this coronation, a move designed to lend the new empire the ancient, holy legitimacy of the Catholic Church. He sits near the altar, a weary, dignified figure in white, a spiritual prop in a very worldly play. The ceremony begins. It is a long, complex affair, a carefully crafted blend of ancient Roman, Carolingian, and new, revolutionary symbolism. There are prayers, there are oaths, there is the anointing with holy oil. And through it all, there is the music. Your orchestra is vast, consisting of hundreds of musicians and a massive choir. The sound you create is designed to be overwhelming, a wave of sound that fills every corner of the immense cathedral, vibrating in the stone floors and rattling the stained glass windows. At key moments, your music swells to a powerful crescendo. As the crown, the scepter, and the other imperial regalia are brought to the altar, you play a grand, heroic march. The music is not subtle. It is a statement of power, a sonic declaration of imperial glory. The climax of the ceremony is the coronation itself. According to 1,000 years of tradition, the Pope should be the one to place the crown on the new monarch's head, a symbolic act demonstrating that the ruler's authority comes from God, mediated through the Church. But Napoleon is not a man who follows tradition. In a moment of breathtaking, calculated audacity, as the Pope reaches for the crown, Napoleon takes it from his hands. He turns his back on the Pope and faces the congregation. And then, he raises the crown and places it on his own head. It is a shocking, revolutionary act. The message is clear and unambiguous. His power comes not from God, not from the Church, not from ancient tradition, but from himself, from his own will, his own genius, his own victories on the battlefield. A stunned silence falls over the cathedral for a single heartbeat. Then, your conductor gives the signal, and the orchestra erupts in the most powerful, triumphal fanfare imaginable. The choir sings, "Vivat Imperator," "Long live the Emperor," their voices soaring to the high, vaulted ceilings. Your bow flies across the strings of your violin, your arm aching with the effort. You are no longer just a musician. You are an instrument of propaganda, your music the sound that consecrates this audacious seizure of power. After crowning himself, Napoleon then proceeds to crown Josephine, who kneels before him, weeping with emotion. Your orchestra plays a softer, more lyrical piece, a brief moment of contrived tenderness in a ceremony dedicated to raw power. As the ceremony concludes, the newly crowned emperor and empress exit the cathedral. The music swells once more, a final, thunderous Te Deum, a hymn of praise. The sound follows them as they step out into the cold December air, the undisputed masters of a new French empire. For you, the humble musician, the day is not yet over. While the imperial party proceeds to a grand celebratory banquet at the Tuileries Palace, you and your fellow musicians are given a simple meal of bread and wine. There is a sense of collective relief among you. You have survived the performance without a major mistake. You have done your part. But there is also a quiet, unspoken understanding of what you have just witnessed. You are a citizen of what was, only a few years ago, a republic born in the blood of a revolution that overthrew a monarchy. You have just provided the soundtrack for the creation of a new one, a new court with a new, self-proclaimed Caesar. As you pack your violin away into its worn wooden case, you think about the strange journey of the past decade. You have played revolutionary anthems like the Marseillaise in public squares, its fiery melody promising liberty and equality. You have played somber funeral dirges for the victims of the terror. And now you have played a grand imperial coronation mass for an emperor. Your music, you realize, is a servant just as you are. It serves whatever power is in charge, whether it is a king, a committee of revolutionaries, or a self-crowned emperor. It is a tool used to inspire, to intimidate, to legitimize, and to awe. You walk out of the great, dark cathedral and into the streets of Paris. The city is celebrating, a mixture of genuine enthusiasm and state-mandated joy. You make your way back to your small apartment, your body aching with fatigue, the grand, bombastic melodies of the coronation still ringing in your ears. You are a small, anonymous part of a great historical event. Your name will not be remembered, but for a few hours your bow, your breath, your hands were part of the sound that made an emperor. And in the silence of your room, you wonder what music you will be asked to play next. The year is 1719. The city is Delhi, the glittering, chaotic heart of a Mughal empire that, while still magnificent, is beginning to show the first subtle cracks of its decline. The air is thick with the scent of jasmine, of roasting kebabs, and of the dust from 1,000 passing camels. The Red Fort, a city within a city, is a blaze of light and activity. The Emperor Muhammad Shah, a young man more interested in poetry and music than in politics, has arranged a marriage of immense political importance. A princess from a powerful Rajput clan is to be married to one of his key generals, a union designed to solidify a fragile alliance. For weeks, the city has been in a state of feverish preparation. You are a court astrologer, a Jyotishi, and your life's work has been leading up to this moment. You have spent months poring over ancient texts, casting complex astrological charts, and calculating the most auspicious possible date and time for this wedding. Every star, every planet, every lunar mansion has been aligned to ensure a future of prosperity, of many sons, and of unwavering loyalty to the Mughal throne. The fate of this alliance, and perhaps a small piece of the empire's future, rests on the perfection of your celestial calculations. And tonight, a single, unexpected visitor in the sky is about to ruin everything. Your role in the Mughal court is one of immense and respected power. You are not a mystic reading tea leaves. You are a master of a complex and ancient science, a fusion of Hindu, Persian, and Islamic traditions of astrology. You understand the cosmos as a great, intricate clockwork, a divine machine where the movements of the celestial bodies have a direct and profound influence on the lives of mortals, especially on the life of the emperor, whose own fate is tied to the fate of the empire. Your job is to interpret the will of the heavens. Before any major event, a battle, a journey, a coronation, or a wedding, it is you who is consulted. You spend your days in your observatory, surrounded by astronomical charts, brass astrolabes, and ancient Sanskrit texts. You track the movements of the planets, the grahas, you understand their benevolent and malevolent aspects, and you know how to calculate the precise moments when the cosmic energies are favorable. For this royal wedding, your work has been particularly intense. A Rajput princess marrying a Mughal general is a delicate political balancing act. You have chosen a date and a specific time for the wedding vows, the muhurta, with painstaking care. You have ensured that Jupiter, the great benefic, is in a strong position, promising wealth and happiness. You have made sure that Mars, the god of war, is in a peaceful corner of the sky, ensuring the alliance is not torn apart by conflict. You have aligned every star possible to guarantee success. Your reputation and a very handsome payment depends on it. The wedding day arrives, and everything is perfect. The sky is clear, the omens are good. The grand procession of the groom, on a white horse adorned with silks and jewels, makes its way through the streets of Delhi. The bride, in her red and gold sari, waits in the women's quarters of the palace, her hands and feet decorated with intricate henna designs. The feast is prepared, the musicians are ready, and the priests are waiting. Your work is done. All you have to do now is sit back and watch the celestial clockwork you have so perfectly arranged unfold. The wedding ceremony is a multi-day affair, a magnificent display of Mughal power and Rajput tradition. The feasting begins in the evening, in a grand courtyard of the Red Fort, lit by 1,000 oil lamps. The air is filled with the sound of sitars and tablas, and the scent of rosewater and roasting meats. As the court astrologer, you have a place of honor seated among the high-ranking officials. You feel a sense of quiet pride. Everything is proceeding exactly as you predicted. The stars above are aligned in a perfect tapestry of good fortune. And then, as the night deepens, someone points to the sky. A murmur spreads through the assembled crowd, a ripple of unease that quickly grows into a wave of fear. You look up, and your heart turns to ice. There, in the northern sky, is a new star, a star that was not on any of your charts. It is a faint, fuzzy patch of light, but even as you watch, it seems to grow brighter, and trailing behind it is a long, ethereal tail of pale, white light. It is a comet, a Dhumiketu, a smoke-haired star. In the cosmology of your world, this is not a wondrous astronomical phenomenon. It is the single most terrifying and inauspicious omen imaginable. A comet does not obey the orderly, predictable paths of the planets. It is a celestial rogue, a lawless intruder into the harmony of the heavens. It is a harbinger of chaos, a sign of divine anger, a messenger of impending doom. Comets are said to foretell the death of kings, the fall of empires, the outbreak of famine, and the coming of plague. To have one appear in the sky on the night of a royal wedding is not just bad luck. It is a cosmic catastrophe. It is a direct, terrifying statement from the heavens that the gods are profoundly displeased with this union. A horrified silence falls over the festive courtyard. The music falters and stops. All eyes are on you. You are the man who reads the sky, the man who promised a night of perfect omens. the father of the bride, a proud and deeply superstitious Rajput chieftain, stares at you with an expression of pure fury. The Mughal general, the groom, looks confused and worried. The emperor himself, Muhammad Shah, looks at you with a silent, questioning terror. Your meticulously planned evening, your perfect alignment of the stars, has just been gate-crashed by the most unwelcome guest in the universe. Your mind races. How could this have happened? Your charts were flawless. The ancient texts gave no indication of this. A comet is, by its very nature, unpredictable. It is a wild card thrown into the divine game by an angry god. You must do something. Your reputation and possibly your life depends on how you handle this cosmic crisis. You cannot simply ignore it. The omen is too powerful, too public. You call for your assistants to bring your astrolabe and your charts. You must be seen to be working, to be wrestling with this celestial problem. You perform a series of frantic, largely performative calculations, your hands shaking slightly as you measure the comet's position. The crowd watches your every move, their fear and hope now resting entirely on you. After a long, dramatic pause, you are ready to deliver your interpretation. This is the most dangerous part of your job. Your reading must be theologically sound, politically astute, and, most importantly, reassuring enough to prevent the entire wedding and the crucial alliance it represents from collapsing in a heap of superstitious panic. You cannot declare that the omen is good. No one would believe you. Comet is never good. But you can try to redirect its meaning. You stand and, in a loud, clear voice, you announce your findings. Yes, you declare it is a comet, a powerful omen. But its appearance tonight is not a sign of displeasure with this auspicious union. Instead, you argue, the heavens have sent this fiery messenger to bear witness to the greatness of the emperor and the strength of this new alliance. The comet is not a threat. It is a celestial salute. The gods are so impressed with this marriage that they have lit a great torch in the sky to honor it. You might even invent a prophecy on the spot, discovering a passage in an obscure ancient text that foretells that a smoke-haired star will appear to bless the union of the great eagle of the Mughals and the lion of the Rajputs. It is a masterful piece of improvisation, a high-wire act of astrological spin-doctoring. Will they believe you? Perhaps. Your interpretation is plausible enough, and more importantly, it is what everyone in power desperately wants to hear. The emperor nods slowly, his expression relieved. The bride's father, while still looking wary, allows himself to be placated. The wedding must go on. The music stutters back to life, a little less joyful than before. The feast continues, but the mood has been irrevocably altered. The guests eat and drink, but their eyes keep nervously darting up at the strange, silent visitor in the sky. The comet hangs there for the rest of the night, a pale, ghostly sword hanging over the celebration, a constant reminder of the fragility of human plans and the terrifying, unpredictable power of the cosmos. You have survived the night. You have saved the wedding and your own skin with your quick thinking. But as you return to your observatory in the pre-dawn hours, you look up at the comet with a sense of profound humility. You are a master of the predictable, the cyclical, the mathematical. You know the paths of the planets to a hair's breadth. But the universe has just reminded you that it is also filled with things that are wild, chaotic, and utterly beyond your comprehension. And you know that for the rest of your life, every time you look at the night sky, you will remember the night a smoke-haired star almost ruined a royal wedding, the night you were forced to lie to an emperor, and the night you learned that even the most careful plans of men are nothing against the whims of a comet. Your world is one of quiet contemplation, of prayer, and of the rhythmic chanting of Latin psalms that marks the passing of the canonical hours. You are a Benedictine monk in a monastery in medieval Germany, perhaps sometime in the 12th century. Your life is governed by the rule of Saint Benedict, a code of spiritual discipline that emphasizes poverty, chastity, and obedience. Your days are structured around the Opus Dei, the work of God, a cycle of 8 daily prayer services. From matins in the pre-dawn darkness to Compline at night, you have renounced the world and its temptations to dedicate your life to the glory of God. But there is another, equally important part of your rule. Ora et labora, pray and work. And in your monastery, the most important, most respected, and most secretly enjoyed form of labor is the brewing of beer. This is not a worldly indulgence. It is a sacred craft, a form of liquid prayer, and, most importantly, the primary source of gossip in a world of enforced silence. Your brewery is not a separate industrial building. It is the beating heart of the monastery's secular life, a warm, fragrant, and wonderfully noisy place that offers a welcome respite from the cold stone of the chapel and the enforced silence of the scriptorium. The air here smells not of incense, but of roasting malt, of sweet, bubbling wort, and of the unique, fruity aroma of fermenting yeast. You are the monastery's brewmaster, the Braxator, a position of immense responsibility and quiet prestige. You might have been chosen for this role because of a keen sense of smell, a strong back, or perhaps just a natural talent for understanding the mysterious alchemy of fermentation. While the abbot may be the spiritual head of the monastery, you are its practical heart. You are the one who provides the liquid bread that nourishes the brothers, welcomes weary travelers, and earns the monastery a handsome income from sales to the surrounding villages. Your day begins in the malt house. Your primary ingredient is barley, grown in the monastery's own fields. You begin by steeping the grain in water for several days until it begins to sprout. This process awakens the enzymes within the grain. Then, the sprouted barley must be dried in a kiln. This is a delicate and crucial step. The temperature of the kiln will determine the color and flavor of the final beer. A low, gentle heat will produce a pale, light malt for a golden lager. A higher, more intense heat will create a dark, roasted malt for a rich, strong Bock beer. You are a master of this process, using your senses of smell and sight to know exactly when the malt is ready. The entire monastery smells of your work, a comforting, bready aroma that is a constant reminder of God's bounty. Once the malt is prepared, the brewing process itself begins. In the center of the brew house is a massive copper cauldron, set over a great fire. You and your assistants, usually a few strong lay brothers, haul buckets of water from the monastery's well, water that is often cleaner and safer than that available to the secular world outside your walls. The malt is crushed, not into a fine flour, but into a coarse grist, and then added to the hot water in the cauldron. This creates the mash, a thick, sweet porridge. You stir it with a massive wooden paddle, a slow, meditative process that feels like its own form of prayer. You are coaxing the life, the sugars, from the grain. After the mashing is complete, the sweet liquid, the wort, is drained off and the spent grains are set aside. They are not wasted. They will be used to bake a dense, nutritious bread for the monastery or fed to the pigs. In the self-sufficient world of the monastery, every part of God's creation has a purpose. The wort is then returned to the cauldron and brought to a vigorous boil. This is when the second most important ingredient is added, hops. While earlier beers were often flavored with a mixture of herbs and spices known as grut, by your time, the preservative and bittering qualities of the hop flower have become well known. You add the hops in stages. Some are added at the beginning of the boil for bitterness, to balance the sweetness of the malt. Others are added at the very end for aroma, giving the beer a floral or spicy character. The brew house fills with a new, wonderfully pungent and aromatic steam. After the boil, the wort is cooled and transferred to large, open-topped wooden fermentation vats. And now comes the most mysterious and magical part of the process: the addition of the yeast. The yeast is a living miracle, a gift from God that you do not fully understand. You maintain your monastery's own unique strain of yeast, a precious culture that has been passed down for generations. You scoop a thick, frothy slurry from a previous batch of fermenting beer and add it to the cooled wort. You make the sign of the cross over the vat and say a quiet prayer to Saint Arnold, the patron saint of brewers, asking for his blessing. And then you wait. For the next few days, a silent, invisible battle takes place in the vats. The yeast awakens and begins to furiously consume the sugars in the wort, transforming them into alcohol and carbon dioxide. The vats come alive, bubbling and foaming, a seething, churning cauldron of life. The brew house becomes a sacred laboratory, a place where you can witness the divine process of transformation firsthand. While the beer ferments, you and your assistants clean. The brewery must be kept impeccably clean to prevent contamination from wild, airborne yeasts or bacteria that could sour a batch. You scrub the great copper cauldron until it gleams. You wash the wooden paddles and vats with hot water and bristly brushes. It is hard, physical work, but it is as essential as any other part of the process. And it is during this time, while performing these repetitive communal tasks, that the other equally important product of the monastery is brewed: gossip. The rule of Saint Benedict mandates silence for much of the day, particularly in the cloister, the church, and the refectory. The brewery, however, is a workspace, a place of noise and steam and fire, and the rules of silence are often relaxed here. It becomes the monastery's unofficial social club. While you and Brother Thomas are scrubbing a fermentation vat, he might whisper to you about the abbot's increasingly strange sermons. While you are hauling sacks of malt, Brother Michael might complain under his breath about the new novice who chants horribly off-key during Vespers. You hear about the petty rivalries between the cellarer and the infirmary, about the beautiful illuminations being created by the elderly Brother Anselm in the scriptorium, and about the latest rumors concerning the bishop's political ambitions. The brewery is the one place where the carefully constructed facade of serene piety can crack, where the very human frustrations, ambitions, and observations of the monks can be quietly exchanged. You are not just brewing beer. You are brewing the social lifeblood of a community of men who have sacrificed all other forms of worldly connection. It is here that you learn who is struggling with his faith, who is secretly proud, and who tells the best jokes when the abbot is not listening. When the primary fermentation is complete, the young beer is transferred to large wooden casks and moved to the monastery's cold, dark cellars for a period of secondary fermentation and aging or lagering. This is where the beer will mature, its flavors developing and mellowing over several weeks or even months. The cellarer, the monk in charge of all provisions, now takes over. He is another key figure in the monastery, a man of immense practical power. A good relationship with the cellarer is essential, as he controls the taps. The beer you produce serves many purposes. The strongest, most flavorful brew is reserved for the abbot, for honored guests, and for celebrating major feast days like Easter and Christmas. A good, strong table beer is the daily drink for the monks themselves. In a world where water was often unsafe to drink, beer was a safer, more nutritious, and certainly more enjoyable alternative. It was a core part of the monastic diet. A weaker, small beer, the result of a second rinsing of the grains, is brewed for the lay servants, the pilgrims who come seeking shelter at the monastery, and for the poor who come to the monastery gates for charity. Your brewery is a source of sustenance and comfort for the entire community, both inside and outside the walls. Finally, the day comes when a barrel is tapped. You draw the first cool, frothy mug from the cask. The beer is a beautiful, clear amber, with a thick, creamy head. You take a sip. It is a moment of profound, quiet satisfaction. You can taste the quality of the barley, the subtle spiciness of the hops, the clean, pure water from your well, and the unique, fruity character of your monastery's ancient yeast. It is a taste of your land, of your labor, and of your faith. You have taken the simple gifts of the earth, grain, water, and flowers, and through your knowledge and your work, you have transformed them into something complex, nourishing, and beautiful. It is an act of creation, a small echo of the divine. As you share a quiet mug of the new brew with the abbot, he might compliment you on a job well done. You simply nod, a humble servant of God. But you also allow yourself a small, secret smile, thinking of the whispered conversations, the shared complaints, and the human warmth that was brewed into this batch, right alongside the barley and the hops.